and they're dishwasher safe. Even after a blast from this white-hot torch, Dura-Shears still cut through this cable like butter. The toughest scissors ever made. Now Dura-Shears are available on this special TV offer with a 50-year warranty at the unbelievably low price of just $12.99. Amazing! Dura-Shears. 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 Accept no substitute. Call now for rush delivery.
Call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. Don't be fooled by the imitators. There's only one Dura-Shears, backed by a 50-year warranty. Have your credit card ready and call now, 1-800-257-1257.
This is CNN.
Bill Clinton fields phone calls from coast to coast, telling voters he's their best choice for change.
Assessing the outcome in the Electoral College. Who's likely to win what when the ballots are cast? It's all part of Inside Politics 92.
This is Inside Politics 92 with Bernard Shaw in Washington and Catherine Crier at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
Inside Politics begins with an update from the campaign trail. Here's Brian Christie.
Another bad check writer in the House banking scandal apparently will not be going back to Congress. Arkansas Congressman Beryl Anthony has lost the Democratic primary runoff to Secretary of State Bill McEwen. Anthony had to run his primary race with the burden of 109 overdrafts at the House bank. His opponent ran campaign ads saying it's time to bounce the bouncer, and Arkansas Democrats agreed by a hair. Unofficial results show the 9-term congressman losing to McEwen by about 1,600 votes. Meantime, Anthony's office is denying any connection to a controversial letter. The form letter that was allegedly sent to contributors said, because of the House post office scandal, I believe the resignation of the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Congressman Rostenkowski, is imminent. This action will move me a step closer to assuming the chairmanship of this important committee. Now, Anthony's campaign press secretary and his attorney tell CNN the letter is a fraud. They said they have filed complaints with the Justice Department and the Federal Election Commission. And it's all over except for the cheering at the nominating conventions this summer. The presidential primary season came to an official close today in North Dakota. On the GOP side, President Bush won a commanding victory over his only opponent, comedian Pat Paulson. The Democrats had already chosen their delegates at caucuses earlier this year. Bill Clinton is challenging George Bush and Ross Perot to 21 presidential debates. He wants to have one a week until the election. The Democratic presidential nominee took his case directly to voters today in a national TV show, and CNN's Jamie McIntyre reports.
My question is, what are your plans as president to reduce the national deficit?
Clinton's sunrise appearance on NBC's Today Show was an opportunity for him to do what he likes best, use the media to take his message directly to voters. He even managed to work in his campaign telephone number.
372-1992, area code 501. I sound like Jerry Brown.
I was about to say, that's your impression of Jerry Brown. But
Clinton fielded some 24 calls in the hour-long broadcast, hammering his familiar themes of cutting defense spending and overhauling the healthcare system, while trying to nail President Bush as ineffective and Ross Perot as insensitive.
Well, I think that he has said and done some things apparently which show a lack of tolerance, and I think that the American people don't want a permissive president or a permissive society, but they do want a tolerant president and a tolerant country.
For the trip back home to Arkansas, Clinton picked up a traveling companion, Democratic Committee Chairman Ron Brown, who said he'll be plotting strategy with the governor in Little Rock, including what's come to be known as the Plan, a legislative package that Clinton would seek to pass with the cooperation of the Democratic leadership during his first 100 days in office.
I think it's the right kind of strategy. I think it's the right approach. Members of the House and Senate seem to be enthusiastic about it.
But the plan Clinton is hinting at is a far cry from the joint effort with Congress New York Governor Mario Cuomo is pushing. Clinton says he's not negotiating a deal, and his discussions with House Speaker Tom Foley have not dealt in specifics.
I think we can show that the Democratic candidate and the Democratic leadership and membership of the House and Senate can and will work together.
Clinton says he'll unveil his 100-day plan soon, but won't say how soon. But the campaign is playing down the notion of reaching any pre-election accommodation with Democratic lawmakers, instead playing up the idea that Clinton is challenging Congress to change, and hinting the plan will include some proposals, such as a line-item veto, that Congress is sure to hate. Jamie McIntyre, CNN, Little Rock.
President Bush, meanwhile, hit the family values issue this evening while campaigning for a fellow Republican. He was in Pennsylvania for a fundraising dinner for Senator Arlen Specter. Bush called Specter one of the leaders in the fight against pornography. He said the ultra-liberals are protecting the vendors of pornography. Specter is in a tough re-election contest. Meanwhile, Democrat Lynn Yackel is making an issue of the way Specter questioned Anita Hill at the Supreme Court confirmation hearings of Clarence Thomas. Vice President Dan Quayle got a rousing reception today at the Southern Baptist National Convention in Indianapolis. Quayle hailed traditional family values and denounced what he describes as cultural elites who believe all lifestyles are equal. The vice president also said he has become the scorn of, in his words, the media elite.
Among the sophisticates, to talk about simple moral principles is considered an embarrassing gaffe. I guess that means they're embarrassed about the views of the average American, because moral values are what the American people care most about. And that's why I say this about the scorn of the media elite. I wear their scorn as a badge of honor.
The vice president drew several standing ovations from delegates who belong to the nation's largest Protestant denomination. Well, he's still not officially entered the presidential race, but Ross Perot is definitely planning something big. First, some speculate he will announce his independent bid on June 27th. That is his birthday, and that's also the date he started his computer company, and the date he sold it, making him a billionaire. Officials at the Rose Bowl in California say Perot's people have been asking how much would it cost to rent the stadium this summer or fall. In the meantime, Perot continues to act like a candidate. Yesterday, he met with a group of mayors. Afterwards, they sounded upbeat about his willingness to hear them out. Meanwhile, Mayor Michael White, a Democrat who had endorsed Bill Clinton, was one, and here's what he said right after the meeting.
Quite frankly, I was struck by his frankness, by his willingness to engage the mayors on key questions that face us. The fact that he is willing, if he is elected President of the United States, to bring the mayors into the White House is refreshing, because the mayors of this country have not been in the White House for any productive dialogue in this country for 12 years. I think it was a positive meeting. I think time will tell how serious Mr. Perot is about dealing with the problems of the country.
But today, back home, White sounded like maybe he had been caught up in the glare of a Texas billionaire.
There's an historical parallel about where this country is and where another country was, and where a leader out of nowhere came who said all the right things, who made all the people feel very good, and ended up being 1,000% different than what he was betrayed, and only because nobody thought to check. They got so caught up in the rhetoric, so caught up in the jingles, so caught up in feeling strongly about the country again that no one decided to check on the payment.
Are you referring to Adolf Hitler?
I'm not referring to anyone. I'm just leaving the parallel for you to make your judgment.
You're not drawing a parallel between Hitler and Perot here, right?
I didn't say I was doing that. Didn't say it at all. You said it.
Well,
are you drawing that parallel?
That was the implication from what you said.
I didn't make an implication. I just said, all I said was that I don't think it's right for this country to buy anything, whether it's a president or a car, that they have very little understanding of and very little history on.
Then who is the historical reference?
You draw your own conclusions.
The Perot campaign backed off suggestions a burglar might have tampered with computer files at campaign headquarters in Virginia. A spokesman now believes a volunteer might have accidentally deleted the files. Perot continues to gain ground in the polls. A new CNN Gallup poll shows the probable presidential candidate weighing in with 39% of the vote in a three-way battle for the White House. That's 8 points ahead of President Bush and 14 points in front of likely Democrat nominee Bill Clinton. Just 3 weeks ago, Perot and President Bush were tied for the lead. The poll has a margin of error of 4 percentage points. In the wake of the tumultuous primary and caucus season, 51% of those questioned said the method was a bad way to pick presidential nominees. 38% said it was a good way. I'm Brian Christie, and now back to Bernard Shaw with a look at what's ahead.
Predicting the count in the Electoral College. Next on Inside Politics 92, political analyst Robert Novak and Newsday columnist Elaine Kamarck offer their views of how the electoral vote shapes up right now. And later in our program, Feinstein and Boxer. Their primary victories mark the breakdown of a very powerful political machine. We'll examine the implications.
Dear Wendy, summer vacation, week 2. I'm having a great time taking a lot of photos. I went to Dolphin World with some new friends. Afterwards, everyone was hungry. Luckily, there was a Wendy's nearby. We had junior bacon cheeseburgers, Biggie fries, Frosties, and Biggie drinks. I treated, because everything on the super value menu is just 99 cents each. And Miss Smarty, I finally broke 100. Love, Dad.
Hey, mister, that's my ball.
Oh, sorry.
Wendy's super value menu, the best place to spend your summer.
If she had a fever, you wouldn't wait a week to see the doctor. If she were hungry, you wouldn't wait a few days to feed her. So why wait even a day to fix the brakes on the car you drive her around in? At Midas, we don't just fix your brakes right. We can fix them right the very same day you bring in your car. Think about it. Midas, because your brakes can't wait.
In a complicated world, which camcorder makes it easy to play back tapes directly on your TV? Without a question, Sony Handycam.
CNN gives you more than breaking news. When we investigate a story, we dig deep. Our comprehensive, in-depth reporting takes you beneath the surface, beyond the headlines. So when you want the whole story and nothing less, turn to CNN.
A candidate needs 270 electoral college votes to win the presidency. The three-way shape of the White House race makes it tough to predict which, if any, candidate will make that grade. But we have two experts ready to assess the current situation. First, syndicated columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times, Robert Novak. In the latest edition of the Evans and Novak Political Report, he sees the Electoral College shaking out this way if the election were held right now. A clear win for Perot with 346 electoral votes. This includes taking the prize states of California, Texas, and Florida. Bush in second with 183. That includes nabbing New York and most of the South. And Clinton, a distant third, with a mere 9 electoral votes. Novak sees Clinton winning only Arkansas and the District of Columbia at this point. Also joining us, Elaine Kamarck, a columnist at Newsday and a senior fellow at the Progressive Policy Institute. Her present electoral assessment produces no out-and-out victory. She has Bush out front with 264 votes. That's 6 shy of what he needs to win. Kamarck sees him taking Florida and most of the South. In second, Perot with 173 electoral votes, including victories in California and Texas. And in third place, Bill Clinton with 101 electoral votes, picked up in 8 states plus the District of Columbia. Now let's rally around the table, you two, and tell us more. First with you, Bob, what does George Bush need to do?
Well, what he needs to do is to stop the evaporation of his base, which is going very quickly, and it's going, at this moment, it's going all to Perot. The interesting thing is, I believe that our valuation of what would happen today, this is a snapshot, not a camera, it actually understates Perot's strength. He might even be a little stronger than that because George Bush is dropping so quickly, and Bill Clinton has not been picking up the Bush support so far. I think he's going to pick it up as time goes on, but not right now.
Elaine, what does Clinton need to do?
Well, I think what Clinton needs to do is
let's start with Ross Perot. Ross Perot today is still an idea. He is not a reality. And therefore, in my count, I think that Bush is probably stronger than is in Bob Novak's count. What Clinton needs to do is be ready for the moment when Perot begins to fade and America takes another look at Bill Clinton. And then I think Bill Clinton needs to be able to present himself as the agent of change. He's young, he's fresh, he ought to be able to do this. And I think he has a better base than Bob Novak gives him from which to do it.
Elaine, I just heard a flashing word in my mind. You said when Perot begins to fade. You expect him to fade?
I do expect him to fade. You hear it in, I do a lot of these radio call-in shows. You see it in the internals of polls. People are hesitant in their support of him. They're saying that they support him, but they're saying, well, I think I support him because, but I don't really know yet. Now, he may fill in all those blanks to the satisfaction of the American public, but right now I think that his support in these polls is greater than in fact it is.
Okay, Bob, you and Elaine now take us to the battleground states, please.
The big states, Bernie, are going to be Michigan, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New York. Those are the states where you have three-way races right now. Based on our evaluation of polls and talking to politicians in all of these states, we find that Mr. Perot is ahead in all of these states except New York, but these are close margins and it can change. I agree with Elaine to the extent that that Mr. Clinton has an opportunity in all of these states. The question is a very serious question: is how is President Bush going to restore his base in those states? I think it's a very difficult problem, but those are going to be the battleground states. I think right now that California and Texas, which are traditionally critical states, are going to be Ross Perot's unless he totally collapses.
Yeah, now, I make probably a slightly different assumption than you did, Bob, in doing this. What I'm assuming, particularly in some of these battleground states where the polls are so close that they are within the margin of error, I'm assuming that George Bush has hit rock bottom, that he's had such a terrible spring, that basically if people are willing to tell a pollster today that they're for George Bush, that if the election were suddenly held tomorrow, they'd go and vote for George Bush. I can't assume that about Ross Perot. And therefore, I think in a state like New Jersey or a state like Ohio, where really the polls that I've seen at least are within the margin of error, I think in those states you've got to assume that if nothing were to change, George Bush would take it, even if there's a 1 or 2 point bias in favor, 1 or 2 point lead for Ross Perot right now.
That's an imponderable. You may be right, Elaine, but on the other hand, there's another way to look at it, and that is that as it becomes not clear, but there's an assumption by a lot of people that Ross Perot can really be elected president, some of the residual Bush support may go to him. So he may even get some Clinton support. I think it is really very difficult to predict the future in these states, and we're not trying to do that. We are just trying to say what will happen if the election were held today.
Well, according to my note-taking, Bob, you ticked off as battleground states Michigan, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, and Elaine, you mentioned California and Texas. You also mentioned New Jersey. Elaine, have you any other battleground states?
Well, I would agree that those are basically the battleground states. Let me say that in California in particular, Dukakis ran very close to Bush last time in California. California is an opportunity for Clinton because that's a place where if Perot begins to fade, the desire for change, the animosity towards Bush is so great that I think you could see California fall into the Clinton category. Somebody told me today that that was the case with Texas as well, that because of the large Hispanic and black vote there, that could end up in the Clinton category as well. I'm a little bit more skeptical about Texas. But I'd say that in New Jersey, I've seen several polls that has President Bush clearly ahead. And New Jersey's been a very strong Republican state. One thing we haven't talked about is that when you start looking state by state, there are factors unique to those states. In New Jersey, Governor Florio's troubles, the Democrats are really in bad shape.
Elaine?
And I think this will impact on the presidential.
Okay, Elaine Kamarck of Newsday and Robert Novak, syndicated columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times and a familiar person here at CNN. Catherine?
Well, up next on Inside Politics, we'll find out how wins by 2 women candidates have thrown a wrench into California's mightiest political machine.
world no bigger than the sandbox, no deeper than the mud between toes. It's spray and wash that has gotten out the food, grease, and grass that little ones get into more than any other stain remover ever made. And that has given more mothers the quiet strength to send them back out into that little world to do it all over again. More than any other stain remover, spray and wash gets out what America gets into.
Tomorrow, he campaigns against government, yet government was the goose that laid his golden egg. Was his the empire taxpayers built? A CNN special assignment, Ross Perot, A Closer Look. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
Just when I need someone to love me, just when I think the world's too cold, there you are, right there beside me. There you are in my heart, standing by me once again. There
Sheba, because you cherish your cat.
The fact that California will have 2 women running as Democratic nominees in that state's Senate races may have been the big news following the primary, but as CNN's Dan Blackburn reports, political insiders in the Golden State are talking about the campaign run by last week's losers.
When Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer won the Democratic Senate nominations in California, they also defeated the state's most powerful political machine, headed by Congressmen Howard Berman and Henry Waxman, an organization with an almost unbroken string of election victories over the last 20 years. But this time, they backed fellow Congressman Mel Levine and State Controller Gray Davis and lost big by nearly 2-to-1 margins. The Waxman-Berman machine strategy for those campaigns was based on money and media, and critics say it went too far.
I don't want to compare him to Darth Vader or anything like that, but this commercial that they did for Gray Davis with the Helmsley thing, I mean, it definitely showed what we call the dark side of campaign management.
That commercial compared Dianne Feinstein to convicted tax evader Leona Helmsley.
Helmsley is in jail. Feinstein wants to be a senator? Truth for a change. Gray Davis, Democrat for U.S. Senate.
It was prepared by a group called Bad Campaigns, the campaign management arm of the Waxman-Berman organization. Bad Campaigns operates from this building and is headed by Howard Berman's brother Michael and longtime associate Carl D'Agostino. Candidates managed by Bad Campaigns concentrate on raising money and buying television time, rather than meeting and greeting average voters. But this time it backfired.
Maybe the lesson is that you cannot depend exclusively on television. In some campaigns it may work, but here in 1992 it did not work.
Losing candidate Gray Davis agrees that voters wanted more.
They wanted to challenge you. At least they wanted to know someone, a neighbor, someone who could vouch for you and say you were a good person. And I think television mattered less in this election than in any previous election in my lifetime.
But Davis' stablemate isn't so sure.
A lot of this second guessing misses the big picture that there was a tidal wave that overtook California primary election politics last Tuesday.
Perhaps, but others suggest the victories of Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer here should not obscure a possible message from voters to billionaire Ross Perot.
If all they see is sort of a big campaign war chest that is spending money manipulating voters through conventional sorts of advertising techniques, I think it'll backlash on them.
Clearly, such techniques boomeranged on California's political big spenders. Levine and Davis spent nearly $10 million, most of it on media.
and bought only defeat. Dan Blackburn, CNN, Los Angeles.
Classic jazz. Now you can explore jazz at its greatest with the Legends of Jazz from the Columbia Music Collection. Listen to the young Louis Armstrong on the recordings that transformed jazz into an art form. Experience the excitement of the Duke Ellington Band's triumphant 1956 Newport Jazz Concert. This is a jazz milestone and Ellington's biggest selling album. Hear Miles Davis' classic album, Kind of Blue, one of the most powerful and beautiful recordings ever made. Call now and audition these 3 jazz landmarks for 2 weeks risk-free. Keep them for a special introductory price of just $9.95 plus $3.95 shipping and handling. You can then receive future Legends of Jazz sets about every other month. Keep only those CDs or cassettes you want. Cancel anytime. So call now and get these 3 CDs or cassettes for our $9.95 special introductory price.
To order the music of Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, and Miles Davis, and your free Legends of Jazz booklet for the special introductory price of $9.95, call now at 1-800-538-6600. That's 1-800-538-6600.
She's got style.
Watch Style with Elsa Clench. Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
Tomorrow on Inside Politics 92, we'll take a look at the company and the contracts that helped make Ross Perot a very rich man. It's a story about Medicare money and benefiting from federal government bureaucracy. That's all for this edition of Inside Politics 92. I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington.
I'm Catherine Crier in Atlanta. Thanks so much for watching.
Mona Lisa, Mona Lisa, men.